Okay, welcome the March edition of the Baltimore SharePoint Users Group. I'm going to share my screen and get right into the proceedings this evening. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the Baltimore SharePoint Users Group. I'm going to go into a few announcements before we get into our featured presentation of the evening. Special thank you to our streaming partners who, of course, are broadcasting this on their Facebook channels, LinkedIn groups, etc. The recording for this, as I was asked by a Beast Bug member, is always available on our YouTube channel. And I can already predict that this will be an excellent session. And excellent sessions, such as the ones that our featured speaker will deliver, are entered into what we call instant vintage, where we replay classic sessions throughout the year for our end user community who may miss the sessions due to work or family commitments, etc. And so um, I received a request for Nate's previous session. So just to give you a an idea. And so for those of you who may not know who I am, or more importantly, the history of the Baltimore SharePoint Users Group, we are Maryland's longest running Microsoft focused community learning institution. And so each month, every third Thursday of the month, we hold community-based sessions with a focus on helping to shorten the learning curve around Microsoft technologies with a specific focus on SharePoint. Obviously, Microsoft has continued to evolve its Microsoft 365 offerings, and so we must evolve with that. And so we have a wider focus where speakers may deliver sessions across, let's say, applications, whether it's Power Platform, Power Automate, and otherwise. And so we're looking to continue to evolve in that way. By the numbers, over 5,200 Microsoft focused professionals, IT workers, and users have been trained and certified through resources provided through this group. And a whopping 25 Microsoft practices have started within our membership. One of the areas, or let's say, facets that I'm most proud of is when someone within the group may be laid off or may just have a higher calling in terms of what they want to see in terms of professionalism and how a company is run. They may start off as a contractor and employee, and they start a practice with either themselves or get a group of friends together, and they evolve and become, let's say, a Microsoft partner, gold partner, etc. And many have come back to sponsor our flagship event, which will be rebranded as Community Days Maryland. And so very proud of the journey we've been on as a group. Special thank you to the good folks at Pro Object. TM Staley is Ted Staley, who you can send your resume to if you are looking for career positions within, let's say, the Microsoft stack. ProObject was ranked as one of the top 100 companies to work for in the great state of Maryland. And so, in terms of community news and events, Community Days New Jersey will be coming up April 6th. Last month, we had Community Days DC, which was a great event by all accounts. And so New Jersey is coming up. Many of the familiar faces behind SharePoint Saturday, New York and New Jersey are coming together again to put together this event. And this will be early 2024. Moving along. Now, in terms of our speaker lineup for 2024, it continues to grow and evolve. And my goal is to have the best speaker lineup for Baltimore SharePoint in the history of this fine learning institution. And so you are a part of that, unless you want to hear me deliver sessions every month of the year. This is your chance to step forward. So whether it's a technical deep dive, break fix, lesson learned, or case study, it's not limited to the 45 to 60-minute session. If you have a 10-minute, this is what I learned when I implemented this technology, that's also just fine as well. I will work with you directly to help with your session quality. Okay, so I will be in the background monitoring the chat, any questions from social media. I will also be moderating in the background. And so, without further ado, I bring to you 9-time published author, the great Nate Chamberlain, one of the most tenured speakers, both with SharePoint Saturday as well as our user group. And so it's great to have him come back. As a background story, last month's event coincided with the birth of my daughter. And, you don't want to have Baltimore SharePoint, the Mercy Hospital edition. And so Nate was gracious enough to come back and deliver this session. It will be recorded and it will be replayed ad nauseum because I know it's going to be a great session, live demo. So we're going to walk through chat-based example or solution that Nate has worked through. He's going to share with you how he came about it, some of the ins and outs regarding it. So without further ado, I bring to the stage the one, the only, the talented Nate Chamberlain.
All right. Thanks so much, Shadeen. Thanks for having me. This is one of the best user groups in the entire country, so I always feel really honored to get to share with your community.
Thank you
So
so
let me go ahead and
much.
share my screen.
Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. All set.
Here we go.
And I'm going to highlight you so you are live on stage.
Perfect. All right. So hopefully you can see my screen. Are we good there?
Yes, everything is clear.
Wonderful. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Today I do want to give you a live demo, so that's exciting always for a speaker. But I really am excited about this one because it's kind of a newer idea for me. This is something I didn't used to try in the past, but I've started dabbling in adaptive cards for Microsoft Teams, and we've seen a huge evolution in Power Automate. So every time there's a chance to play with something new, I'm like, how can I work that into a business process of mine? So this is definitely one of those. It's a newer solution that I've built within the last year. And I think it's pretty cool. I hope you think so too when we're done. So let's talk about how to build a chat-based availability system. Now, before we get into it, where this might come in handy for you in your organization is thinking about when you have people who are kind of spread out all over the place. Maybe you have multiple geolocations, maybe different office locations, right? Maybe you have an industry where some people are in the field and some people are in an office somewhere. Or like me, you have kind of a hybrid setup where sometimes people are working from home, some are in the office. And we needed a way to maybe throw in when people were on leave, right? So it gives us a very clear idea, no matter what your situation is, of who's where, who's available. Can we collaborate in person? Do we need to schedule hybrid meetings or have a meeting room reserved? Those kinds of decisions. The problem that this solves is when you try to coordinate those efforts, typically we get these silos of communication, right? It might be a text over here, a phone call over there. Maybe you chatted that person or emailed a group and only heard back from two. So the idea here is to put as little effort as possible into trying to gather everybody's availability or their locations, however you want to think about that, and automate it, right? Use Power Automate, the tools at our disposal to share with everybody where everybody on the team is in a particular week. So the end user requirements for this solution were they needed a way to be asked every single week what their intentions were for the following week. So you can see an example here in the screenshot where on Friday of every week it says, all right, where are you going to be next week? Monday, are you in office, telework, or leave? And then you can see that continues throughout the week. So that's one piece of it. And then after someone submits their availability, the idea is that you'll get a preview of everything that's been submitted so far. So let's say I'm the first person, I'm only going to see mine, right? But if I'm a later person in the day, maybe submitting it, after 3 or 4 other people have, then what I'm going to see next after I submit mine is mine in addition to those 3 or 4 other people who already submitted theirs. So immediately, without waiting for the final results, I'm getting a glimpse, an idea of where other people are going to be. The other nice thing about the solution is that we're going to have constant availability to submissions. We don't have to wait for the final results. At any point, people can go and check the live list to see who's responded, who hasn't, and where everybody's going to be. The final piece of the solution is a comprehensive update on Monday, still Power Automate, very similar to the first flow that you're going to see here. But on Monday, everybody gets a table that says, here's the final results. It shows who's responded with specific answers and also who didn't respond. So kind of calls them out, right? So let's get into it. To do this solution, there's no special licensing, no special anything outside of a traditional E3, E5. But you will want to get familiar with the adaptive card designer. You don't have to be a coder or developer. In fact, I'm not. I just know how to click around and tweak things here or there to get it to do what I need it to do. So there's lots of samples out there. In fact, I'll just show you that very quickly here. Whoops, not quite demo time. All right, so lots of samples. So you can see when you, and I can share this link with you later, but on the left side here, there's lots of samples. And as I'm showing you just a couple here, look on the far right side, because this is kind of how it would look in Microsoft Teams. So you can see this one's a very simple set a due date. Let's look at one where they're placing an order. So between these three things, they can choose one option, right? And maybe drop it down and choose how it's cooked. Simple input form. This one's pretty popular, right? Just type something in. What is the invoice number for this? What is the person's name who you're requesting guest access for? So all kinds of really cool examples I'd encourage you to just dig through to see how could adaptive cards be useful for me at work. So after you maybe pick a sample to start from, you can start designing. And so that's where I started. I started with some kind of input form sample, and I kept tweaking it until I came up with my form, which looks more like this. And when you're using the designer, as you can see here, it gives you a preview, right? I can see kind of how the user is going to interact with my adaptive card, and you can change kind of the viewing experience. So for example, if I choose Microsoft Teams as the end destination for this adaptive card, I can also change the mobile or desktop experience to see how it's going to look for different people. So right now we're looking at desktop. Let's change it to mobile. And I can see, ooh, this might be a little tight for mobile. But in my case, I'm pretty confident most of my users are on a laptop, hopefully. But this is a huge consideration. Definitely take that away from today, that you might want to consider what your adaptive card is going to look like on those smaller devices. All right, so that's Adaptive Card Designer again. It's adaptivecards.io/designer. All right, so getting back into just a couple more slides, and you saw we're almost to the demo. The best part, right? But I've got those links here, and then Power Automate, of course, you probably have dabbled in it if you're in this user group, or you've heard of it at least. So today you're going to see it in real time, right? We'll start from scratch after you see the finished solution, and then you'll get to see every single thing that goes into it, and you'll see that you can build it in 1 hour, right? All right, the other thing, SharePoint teams, right? We can't do any of this without a place to store the information and a place to communicate the availability. All right, before we get into the demo and seeing the final solution as well as something built from scratch, Shadid, do we have any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat, not in social media as well. Please proceed.
All right, let's get into the demo then. Thanks, Shadid. Okay, so we're going to close this. We're going to switch over to one of my demo accounts. And I want to start out by showing you kind of the setup, and then we'll go back and build it. So first of all, I've got a few tabs open for this demo account for Nate. And my first tab, just Teams, nothing special there. Second tab, there's a list that you have to build for the solution. This would be the first thing you would do actually, where you create a blank list, and all you need is a column for each day of the week and a person column for the employee. All right, so you'll see that built here in just a little bit, but that's kind of the back end here. And then we have two flows to power the solution. The first one is the one that runs every Friday, and it says, hey, what are you doing next week? And then the second one, well, here, I'll go ahead and scroll and show you kind of the structure of this one. But we can see it's a scheduled trigger. It gets items from that availability list, loops through them, and then updates twice. The first time is to say, we asked this person. The second update is to input their response, if they respond. Okay, it creates a table of all the responses that we've gotten so far and post that in a chat to them. All right, so we'll slow down and we'll go through that in more detail, of course, but that's the overall idea. The second flow is the one that runs on Mondays. So on Mondays, every single morning, or every Monday morning, we also send messages. But this time it's going to be a group chat, as opposed to sending individualized chats saying, hey, what are you doing, Nate? This time we're saying, hey, team, this is us. This is what we're doing this week. So it's a little bit of a different structure here, but we're still getting items. We'll talk about the variable and what we're doing here later. But then once again, we're just creating a table of the responses, posting that in a group chat this time. All right, so let's go to the first flow and we'll just run it so you can see what happens. Now I do have multiple users here. So I've got myself, Nate here. I also have Miriam. So when I'm switching windows, the purple bar at the top, that's Miriam's Teams experience. And I also have Megan. Megan has the dark mode on, and she also has compact chat. So that'll help you with the context switching just a little bit. But 3 users is all I'll show you today, even though we're going to ask 5 people for their availability. So going back to Nate, who has the flow, let's pretend it's Friday morning. We'll just go ahead and test this manually. And by the way, while that's loading here, I am using the new designer for this. If you're not quite yet adopting the new designer in Power Automate, then what you could do is watch my video that I have on YouTube that'll show you the classic designer, just part of this build. So let's see, you might have heard that dinging. I'm not sure how good the noise cancellation is, but I did just get a chat message. And when I go check it, I now have a chat from Workflows. So Workflows says, hey, good morning. What are you going to do next week? Let's go ahead and answer. Going in the office Monday, telework the rest of the week. All right, I hit submit. It goes out to that list immediately and gives me the results so far for the whole team. And it's just me. All right, let's switch to Miriam with the purple bar at the top. Same thing, she has a chat message. We look at this adaptive card. We can answer maybe a little differently this time. She only teleworks 1 day a week. Hit submit. You can see how quick this is too. Goes out, gets the list, brings it back, boom, 2 people. One more time. All right, it's like a workout video almost. So third round here, we will go ahead and put Megan on leave the last 3 days of the week and submit. And again, almost immediately, we'll get that full table. So in each of these notifications, just notice at the bottom we're saying you can view the most up-to-date availability list and make changes, because obviously people are answering this at different times. So if Megan, 3 hours later wants to know if she can coordinate an in-person event for some people, she can just come back to this chat message, have this readily available link near the top of her chat list, hopefully, that she can click to take her to that list. Let's give it a try. We'll go ahead and sign in as Megan. Here we are, it takes us to the list. Now in the message that we send to them, I'm also saying if you have to change your availability, this is how to do it. Click that same link. And in this case, you see listed here, or everybody receiving those chats has contribute access to this list because they're members of this team. That is a consideration we'll talk about later when we're thinking about when you might have people outside your team submitting their availability. But for now, I know that Megan has permissions here. She can come in here and edit her availability, and she can edit everybody else's. Now, that's another thing we'll talk about later if we have some time about how we can lock that down on a per item basis. All right, so that's kind of the full picture. So how do we get started? Or actually, let's go ahead and do the Monday one too while we're at it, just so you can see what we're getting into here. Now, this one is the one that just gives the final result. So Monday at 8 a.m., we'll go ahead and pretend we're there. All right, so kicked that off. And again, we'll talk about what some of this is doing in just a moment. You might have just heard the beep, so we got a new chat message. Let's see what it is. Now this time, instead of coming from a one-on-one chat with workflows, there's a new group chat created called Team Availability. So I'm gonna go check that out. I can see that it's 5 people included in this chat, and it's everybody who's listed in that list, whether or not they responded. So you can see Nestor and Isaiah did not answer. It just says that we requested it from them, and we can see that they're included in this chat. So even if they didn't respond, they do get to benefit from seeing everybody's availability for next week. And then we get the full table, right? The same memo that you can always view the most up to date and make changes in that list. All right, any questions before we move into the actual build?
Yes. Was there a steep learning curve when going from the new designer in Power Automate versus the classic mode?
I will say that's a great question, but I'll say it's a little jarring. But let me be completely honest with this group. I usually stick to the classic designer. I'm one of those people. But knowing that I was going to be presenting for this fantastic group, I thought today I'm going to challenge myself. And when I was building this out, I went ahead and used the new designer the entire time. So that's a testament to its ability to be understood quickly. It wasn't too hard to adjust. The biggest part is just it's visually different, and the way to get to certain features is slightly different. So if you're like me and you're still kind of clinging to the classic and you're not quite sure about new, hopefully by the end of seeing this built firsthand, you'll feel more comfortable with it too. At least, how do I get to certain things?
Yes, that's I think that's the added value of this session is that it brings additional context.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Okay, those are
All
all the
right.
questions. Please proceed forward.
Wonderful. Thanks, Shadid. All right, so to do this, I want to create a whole new site just to give you the from scratch perspective here. We'll go ahead and bring up a separate window for this, I think. Here we are, and we'll just scoot this one to my other screen here. And let's go to SharePoint. Okay, so we'll create a new site. And let's go with our event planning template here since we're at an event right now. And we'll call it Beastbug Live Event. Here we go, and next. Create. And now this part, the members, just remember with my example that I showed you, everybody who's being asked for their availability is a member of the team where the list is hosted. That doesn't have to be the case, so just keep that in mind. But I am going to put Miriam in here and Megan, and then my 2 non-responders, Isaiah and Nestor, and myself. I don't have to since I'm the owner, but I'll put it on there for visibility. All right, pretty quick. I've got my brand new site. First step, most important step, we need a place for these answers to go. So I'm going to go up to the top and click on New and choose List. Now this is nothing fancy. It's one of the simplest lists you'll ever build. So we're just going to use a blank list. Now for me, I like to call this just what it is, very plainly, this is team availability. If you look at this list, you'll see who's available. So team availability, and I will show it in site navigation just because I want people to find this easily at any time throughout the week. All right. Now with a blank list and with any SharePoint list, you always get a title column. So rather than try to hide it or delete it or anything, I just repurpose it for Monday. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. I'm going to drop down my settings and rename title to Monday. Okay, we're going to repeat adding columns that are text type for each day of the week. And I'm going to try to multitask and not misspell anything. Let's see if I can do it. Wednesday on there. Also, we're going to practice our days of the week. We're going to have to go Monday through Friday several times in this build. Last one. Okay, now the most important piece to know how we can communicate with the people who are part of our team is adding the person column. So we're going to add a column of person type. This one I'm going to call employee. Right, and I like to show the photos, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that on and choose save. All right, and just for my own aesthetic preference, I'm going to drag that all the way to the front. There we go, and we'll go ahead and shorten Monday so it's a little more consistent. So I've got my person column, I've got all the days of the week. Last piece, who's on our team? Who do we want to ask for their availability? Because you could, in your flow, say ask every person who's a member of this group. But for me, maybe it's only certain people who I want to ask availability from. Maybe I'm excluding contractors or guests, anything like that. So we're going to, once again, put in Miriam and Megan and Nestor and Isaiah and one more, Nate. Okay, there we go. That's it. That's all we have to do on the SharePoint side. So let's switch to Power Automate. So I'm going to go to my app launcher and choose Power Automate. You can also go to make.powerautomate.com if you prefer, but after you start using it from the app launcher, it will show up eventually on its own. All right, let's create our first flow. So I'm going to go to Create, and both of these are schedule triggers. So I'm going to go Create and then Scheduled Cloud Flow. And for the first one, I'm going to call this, let's say, Team Availability Request. The other one's called Survey, so I've got to be careful not to give it the same name. So Team Availability Request, and we'll say every week on, let's go with Fridays at 10 a.m. Sounds good. All right, and here we are in the new designer. So I'll just kind of point out some things as we go through that I had to get used to. The first is when you switch to the new designer and you open up one of the actions, everything that you need to configure it is below, right? And there's an ellipsis up here somewhere where you can change settings and things. Every single thing in the new designer will open up on a left panel now. What I do like about, actually, you know what, you'll see it for yourself in just a moment. So let's just keep going through the configuration here. Even though I said to start at 10 a.m., it's just when it's starting. So I just want to re-specify that I do want this to run at 10 a.m. So it's just confirming it runs at 10 a.m. on Friday every single week. That part's done. Next, we're going to get the items from that team availability list that we just created. So first, since this is a brand new site, it's probably not going to show up in my options when we get there. So I'm just going to proactively come here and copy the URL for that site. And then we'll go to add that new step. So the second step of our flow is going to be get items. And this is what I like a lot about the new designer is some of you may have noticed in the past with the classic designer that when you search for something, what you're looking for is usually 14 items down, or you have to scroll and it's not alphabetic and it's definitely not showing you the most relevant result first. This is very different. And I love that it's grouping by connector and it's not all intermixed. So immediately when I typed in get items, I'm seeing exactly what I want right at the top. So I'm going to say get items. And again, everything we're configuring will always be on the left panel. No more moving around the flow structure to figure out where the step was. So consistently over here on the left, I'm confirming that I'm not seeing my Bspug live event site. So I'm going to enter custom value. Okay. Once you do this for your site once, it'll show up the next time. But just since it's brand new, we have to establish it. So I'm choosing that site, choosing my team availability list. And then this is another part that's a little different with the new designer. Everything that you're used to from the advanced options before, like filter queries, ordering by using OData, all of that stuff is now on this dropdown. Or you could choose show all to open them all up, kind of like we're used to with Classic. Okay. So for ours, we are going to filter only the items that have been requested. So let me get in here real quick. And I'm just going to copy to save myself some time. Just one moment. Should have this ready. Almost there. Let me switch this over here. Here's a tip. If you're going to do a live presentation, have all your stuff ready to go. So most of it is. Here we are. Okay, so let's keep going. So I'm not going to put any filter query here. I could maybe down the road. That might be something where you might want to say you add a column for, someone's on leave for paid parental leave. Maybe that's Shadid's future, right? Where I could check a box and say they're on extended leave. So let's not ask every single week when they can't even answer, or something like that. But you would do that in your filter query here and say the name of that column equals false or equals true, however you set that up. So you'll see an example of a filter query here in just a little bit, but it wasn't this step. So we'll keep on moving. Now the next one, after we've gotten all items from that new team availability list, we're going to loop through each of them and update them to say that we've asked for availability. So we're adding an action, and we'll use our search again to update item. There we are. Once again, popping up right at the top. I love that. We'll update, and we'll choose that same site. I still have to enter it this way for now. Same list. And this time, our dynamic content, a little bit different here again with the new designer. Just choose the lightning bolt for dynamic content, choose FX for an expression. So I'm going to go to dynamic content, choose my ID from the get item step, and just like before, it'll put it in the for each loop for us. Now, next up, we are going to specify all the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday columns with the requested status. So for me, I'm just going to copy my emoji here. I use the hourglass emoji just to dress it up a little bit, but that's up to you. So I'm going to choose show all. And then for title, which remember is Monday actually, I'm going to paste hourglass requested. Right. Now, if you're not familiar with using the emoji shortcut to be able to use these in Power Automate, it's Windows key period. When you do that, then you can use an entire library of emojis. Let's see, I can switch over here, search for anything I want. So I am going to use that multiple times in this solution. So that's where that came from. That's Windows key period. All right, so that's Monday. Here's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Easy, right? That's all we're doing there. And then our next one is posting the card. Now this is where it gets interesting, and we have to use that adaptive card designer. So I'm going to add an action still inside this for each loop. Okay. This one is post adaptive card. It's the very first one, post adaptive card and wait for a response. Here we are. And we're going to post this as the Flowbot. We're going to post it in a chat with the Flowbot. That's the one that's going to say workflows eventually. And then for the message, this isn't asking for you to type anything. This has to be JSON. So that's what you're going to get from the adaptive card designer, which I'll pull back up here. Here we are. Okay, so I'm just going to switch my window here so you can see after you've configured your JSON and everything looks good on your designer and you've tweaked it to exactly what you want, down below it's been compiling your code for you. So I'm just going to copy everything down there in this card payload editor, ignore the data one, and we'll bring it back to our Power Automate. We'll paste it in here. And you can see when I was configuring it, I put more emojis in. So Windows key period with an office building, Windows key period with a house, Windows key period with a palm tree. All right, so that's all throughout there. And all this is doing is just, again, JSON to create sort of a table layout with each day of the week and a submit button. All right, if you want this code, by the way, I do have it. It's in a blog post, so I'll share that link with you at the end as well. So you can just copy it and you won't have to change anything. One thing you may want to change, though, is if you don't use the same verbiage in your workplace, like maybe instead of in office, you say on site, or maybe instead of telework, you say remote. And maybe instead of out of office, you say something else. I don't know. But you get the idea. You might have to update what we're calling these things. All right. So for recipient, this is going to be from our dynamic content again. So I'm going to open up the lightning bolt. I'm going to search for email, and I'm going to choose from my get items step again, the employee email. Okay, so everybody who's in that list is going to get this question or this survey. All right, that's it for the post adaptive card and wait for a response step. So next up, we are going to update the item with their response. because this action does wait for them, we know that at this point we do have a response, or we don't. Maybe they didn't answer, right? And nothing else will happen. But if they do respond, we now need to update the list with whatever they responded with. So I'm going to add another step, add an action here, and it is update item one more time. Okay, kind of rinse and repeat here. So I'm going to go a little bit faster just to get through here. There we go. We use our dynamic content again, same get items. We're going there pretty frequently in this for each loop. And I'm going to show all. Now, once again, I've got the title, Monday, right? And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I've never changed an employee because I don't want to update that. So for title, I'm going to use my dynamic content this time instead of posting an emoji. And in my posted active card dynamic content section, I will have a Monday. Now you'll see I don't see it right away, so I could either search for it. Oh, I didn't like that for some reason, so don't search for it. Just use this see more, and then scroll down. Oh, and it's being real shy, isn't it? Let's see. That'll happen sometimes. So I'm just going to repaste. See if I can trick it. There we go. Let's see if I get Monday now. There it is. Yes. If when in doubt, just paste again. We'll try to shake it in there. So we've got Monday and then Tuesday, and I'm just going to repeat. Remember, we're practicing our days of the week a little bit with this one, and you can see this time I'm utilizing the search to help it go a little bit faster. Your preference, though. All right, so we just updated the item, their item, right, with their response. Next up, we're going to get all of the items that have been submitted so far, and that's how we send that follow-up to say, thanks for responding. Here's what we've gotten so far. So inside the for each again, because we're kind of just dealing with one person in the list here, we're going to add one more action. And this is, once again, get items. So get items, plural. We're going to choose that same site. And then we'll choose the same list. Show all. And from here, I don't want to send this person the requested rows, especially if they're the first. That might be annoying on a team of 30, where you're going to say, hey, Nate, here's yours, and then 30 rows of hourglasses times 5, right? It's probably not great. So this is where I was thinking earlier I was going to put a filter query, but it's actually going to go here, and I'm just going to copy it again to save some time. Here we are. Okay, and I'll explain how this works too. So remember, Monday is title. So whenever you're dealing with OData filter queries in Power Automate, whatever the internal or original name of that column is what it's looking for. So it won't recognize Monday at this point. So I have to say title, and then not equals is NE. So the title / Monday is not equal to that hourglass requested that I put in for the default value. And Monday is not equal to null, or it's not empty, right? So there has to be something in there, meaning that we did request it and they responded, which means it won't say this either. So anything we're getting at this point is a response. All right, so we've gotten the trim down list. Now we're going to share that list. So our next two actions close out this flow, and that's creating the table and then sending the table. So first, we'll create the table, add an action. And for both flows, the action is create HTML table. This is one that's sometimes tricky to find in the classic one. We'll see how easy it is here. There we go. Create HTML table, boom. Nice and quick, right? Now, for our array, we're going to use our dynamic content, and we're going to choose the value from get items 1, or in my case, that trim down list, right? So I'm going to choose the value there. And then instead of doing automatic, here we go, just show all or show that one parameter add. Change automatic to custom. This is very important because if you leave it as automatic, you're going to end up with a table that has like 30 some columns, even though your list seemingly only has, 6. And that's just because there's a lot of other data behind your list. So now that we've done custom, we get to specify what we want this table to have. So we're going to say employee, and we'll use our dynamic content to show a display name this time from that get items 1, or again, the trim down list. So employee display name. Now, just bear with me as I rinse and repeat a few times for Monday through Friday. And remember, Monday is title. Doesn't matter how many times I do this one, I always forget that title, when you're getting it here, is the dynamic content. Wednesday. Again, trying not to typo either. And one more. Right, we've got our table, employee, and then Monday through Friday will be represented from that get items one step. All right, so that's the table. Now we need to put it in a message. So we're going to add one more action. This will be post a message in chat or channel again. There we go. Okay, this is still going to be Flowbot. We're going to leave that alone, and then it'll just be another chat with Flowbot, so private one-on-one with the workflows. The recipient is the same as before, so dynamic content, go all the way back to your original get items data, just for cleanliness here, and we'll choose employee email. All right, now for message, again, going to copy and paste because I don't want to type all this. There we go, but on mine, I'm saying something like, your availability for the upcoming week has been recorded. Here's the table, and I'll take out the dynamic content so you can see how I put it in, but just wherever you want the table, again, choose your lightning bolt, and then the output from your create HTML table. There we go. Now I like to dress it up just a little bit, so I want to catch their eye and say the most up-to-date availability, because they're probably wondering if they're the only person in the table, is available here. So I'm going to go grab this link to our list. I'm going to hyperlink team availability list. All right, I know someone out there just watched that and they're like, that's not how you do it in Classic. It's a little bit different, right? It's got pros, it's got cons. So now we've got our message, and that's the end of this flow. Now we want to test it. So I'm going to hit save. And just to make sure we're doing an honest test here, we're going to go over to my other window that I have here, and we're going to delete the two chats that came from the old one. All right, so that's emptied out. We're going to test our new flow. And there's something I forgot, which will be a really good lesson. So we'll wait and see if anybody catches it. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to have to go to, who is it? This one. Okay, so Miriam got it. Now, this is actually illustrating exactly what I wanted to show you that I just forgot about. Notice that Nate didn't get a chat message. Miriam did here at 6:30. So she can go ahead and respond, and let's see what happens. Okay, her response goes in, it goes out to the list, brings back the result. You know, we've seen this part before. What's interesting, though, is Nate still doesn't get a message, but, and you're probably putting it together already, Megan did get one at 6:30. So there's one more thing that I forgot that you do have to do when you're building the flow so that it doesn't do sequential like that, because you want it to ask everybody at the same time, right? Because what if Miriam never answered? Nobody else on the team gets the survey. So we're going to go change one small thing, which is really easy to do. On our for each loop, which is contacting each individual person, we're going to select that, and we're going to go to our settings, and then there's something called concurrency control. So with this is where you can choose the degree of parallelism. I think I'm in the wrong window. Let me get my window straight, because that one's the old one. Here we go. So this is the new flow. So you already saw what I'm going to change it to. But for each, you go to settings and then turn on concurrency control, because if you don't do this step, that's what causes the singular or sequential messages to go. So we'll turn it on. We can go up to 50. So keep that in mind as a limitation here. If you have bigger teams, you might want to come up with a slightly different structure for your flow to make this work. So think about, parallel, think about doing it in batches, right? Where we can filter by, last names and do these people alongside these people, there's different ways we could approach it. But for me, I've got 5 people. Realistically, I'd say most of us have smaller than 50 teams, but very large companies, or if you're thinking about scaling this larger, you're going to have to reconfigure a little bit. So 50 people can get this at one time. Great, and I'll hit save. Okay, so we'll call that one done so we can move on, and we'll do the second one real quick. So new tab here, just to keep it separate. And we'll do create again, kind of rinse and repeating here. We'll go to scheduled again. This one is team availability Monday, update. At 10 a.m. once a week, very similar. Once you do the first one, you're going to feel really confident about doing this one, I think. So we'll hit create. All right, once again, we've got our new designer here that we'll try. And I'm just going to specifically put in my 8 or 10 a.m. So for me, you know what I did? I did Friday, didn't I? We're going to switch it to Monday. So Monday at 8 a.m., we're going to send those results. All right, so let's get into this one. So our first one, just like the last one, is going to be get items. Once again, we're connecting to that list, right? So we know what to communicate. And in this case, we also don't have any filter queries. We're just going to get everything on the list. And this time we are going to show the people who didn't respond too. So it's going to be even less OData than you saw last time. All right, let's see. This time we are seeing the site pop up since we've used it already, and it's recognizing that. So we can just choose it from the drop down. Here we go, team availability. No OData filter on this one, so we'll just leave that all alone. Now for the next part, it's kind of interesting, a newer concept that you haven't seen in this session yet, and it's using a variable. Variables are very handy. I use them in tons of flows. And in this one, it's going to help us get a string of all of the people in the list that we can send a group chat to. Because you saw already, it's easy to send individualized messages to everybody. It takes a little bit of work to get everybody in a group on one chat. So this is how we establish that. We're going to add an action. The first step is called initialize a variable. Go initialize variable. We're going to call this one recipients. It's just like a 2-line of an email. And this is a string. Anytime you're working with just text, string, and then it doesn't need a value to begin with. We're going to add that later. So to add that, this is where we're going to loop through the list, and we're going to grab that employee field and basically take the emails only and add them with a semicolon between each. Just like, again, you might in a different action. So we're adding an action again. We're going to, let's do a condition. And I'll explain why. Okay, and I'm going to add another action. I'm going about this in a strange way, but it's for a reason. Apply to each. All right. So these two things are very important for this variable because the apply to each is going to allow us to loop through each of the get item steps, right, and grab that email and put it in the variable. Now, one gotcha or one thing you're definitely going to get an error with if you don't add the condition or some way, to filter this out is if you do put yourself in there, which if you're in the list, you are in there, right? But if you do have yourself in that variable at the end of the flow, it will error because by default, simply because you created this flow, and you're in the list, you're in the chat. So you don't have to specify yourself. If you do end up in that final variable, then it's going to error because you can't be in there twice. So we're going to drag this condition inside that apply to each. So we're checking each one as we go through to make sure that it's not me. Okay, so for my condition, I'm going to open that up once again in my side panel here, and I'm going to say that the employee email does not contain. That's Nate at Chamberlain. There we go. So that's the only part I'm going to do. You could do equals, of course, and you could do that a dozen different ways, but that's how I'm going to do it. Employee email doesn't contain that part. Now, if that's true, I do want to put the email in my variable. So on the true side, I'm going to add an action. It's called append to string, append or add to string. This one I have to scroll for. First one, append to string. We're going to choose recipients, and this is going to be just like before, email. Employee email, but this time, very important, put a semicolon after. So it'll be your email, semicolon, my email, well, not really mine, but the other person's email, so on and so forth, until you have a long string. All right, that's all we have to do for the variable. We've got our 2-line for our eventual group chat. So the next thing is we need to do one more very important thing, which will definitely give you an error if you don't follow. So this is something I'm going to copy and paste here. But we need to, at the very end of that string, take off the last semicolon. Don't ask me why. It's just the way Power Automate is. If you have that final semicolon all by itself, it thinks there's going to be one more for some reason. And so we have to take it off so it knows that's where to stop. So outside of our apply to each's, at the very bottom, we're going to add another action. And I just choose use compose. You could do this a different way. But for me, I like compose because I can see the result pretty easily. And I'm going to paste an expression in here, but I'll show you how I built it. So let me take that out. Instead of dynamic content, when you're doing an expression, which is just an easy way to transform your text, we can choose function instead of dynamic content. And then I'm going to paste what I just had on my clipboard here. There we go. And I'll take off the curly brackets and the @ sign so you can see it. But all we're doing is we're taking part of the variable called recipients, which is our string of emails. And at the very end, we're just taking off one character. That's all this does. So I'm going to add that. Oops, and it doesn't like it, but we're going to try again. I will be relentless. Probably get an extra space somewhere. Okay. You know what? I liked it before. I'm just going to put it back in. So we've got our same exact expression. You can see right there when I hover. So we've got that cleaned up. Now we can create the table. So we're gonna, just like before, create HTML table. We're going to create it from that get items action. So just like before, get items the value field. And instead of automatic, remember to change it to custom or you're going to end up with the ugliest table you've ever seen. So one more time, we're going to do our days of the week. Okay. Employee is employee display name, Monday, and dynamic content for Monday. Oops, sorry, title. See, I do it every time. There we go. Tuesday and Tuesday. If someone's into like AI song generation, this would be a great time to think about some lyrics. And Thursday now. And Friday. Oops. All right, there's our last table of this solution so far. We have 2 more steps. So I'm going to first, when you're doing a group chat, you can't just post in a chat. You have to establish the chat. Now, if you have a group chat that you want to reuse or just keep adding to, you could get the conversation ID for it and just use that again and again every single week, which would be cleaner. But in our case, I'm going to create a new chat every week. So just my personal thing for the time savings in this session. But honestly, I would probably prefer one chat for all time. So I am going to create a chat before I post in it. Okay, so create a chat. Members to add, you know where this is going. We're going to use our dynamic content and choose our recipients variable. For the title, this is how I got it to say team availability. I'm just going to do the same thing. Team availability. That's it. That's all we have to do for that step. Final step. We're going to add an action and we're going to post a message in a chat or channel, just like before. This time, though, it's a little bit different. We're going to leave it as Flowbot, just like we did before, but instead of a chat with Flowbot, choose group chat this time. All right, give it just a second, it'll pop up. We can choose our dynamic content from the previous step by choosing enter custom value and then dynamic content. And then for create a chat, now we have a conversation ID. We'll choose that. And once again, to save time, I'm going to copy and paste the whole message, which is very similar to before. We still have this output here, but you saw how that was added before, so I'm not going to do it again. And then once again, I'll throw in my formatting here and my link. And let's see, there we go. Cool. And save. We don't have to worry about, oops, what did I forget? Select an output from previous on the apply to each. Oh yes, that would make sense. So just a small little slip there. The apply to each needs to know what to loop through, and I forgot to tell it the value for get items. So I'm going to go to my dynamic content and choose the value from get items. There we go. The best thing about live demos is you get to see those little flubs, and so you know when it happens to you, you're like, oh yeah, that one thing that Nate ran into. All right, so we're going to test this one as well. Just make sure it can run successfully. It's looping through our table. It's building the recipient string, right? Then it's going to create the HTML table. Okay, and it's going to, oh, it failed on, let's see, creating a chat. Let's see why. Shared teams, field is missing. That's interesting because that is the semicolon thing. Let's check. Let's see, here I am, just making sure I'm not in here. Maybe that could be a, oh, we're getting duplicates. It's interesting. Let me go check the list real quick. Oh, you know what I think I did? I think I chose the old list from the first demo. Let me just double check. Let's see, that's live event, team availability. Let's just refresh here. Interesting. Let's start with the first one again, just to see if we fill out the rest of the table. All right, there we go. We got a chat here. I'll pull it over to the side. Workflows, we'll answer it. Last time we'll run through this, I promise. We'll do it with Miriam's here as well. And we'll do it with Megan's last time. There, you're hearing lots of beeping. It's doing its work in the background. Or if you're not hearing it, it's really happening. We'll test this one more time and see what's going on with that string. Oh, and you know what? I just realized that there's an apply to each and a for each here. So all I'm going to do is drag that outside. I should have tried to show you like piece by piece like I did, because that put it in a double loop, and that's why we had multiple people show up. This will fix it. Someone out there was holding on to that. They're like, Nate, it's the double loop. All right, let's see if we get that final one. Much faster this time. Nope, and it still doesn't like that chat. Let's see. Miriam, Megan, Nestor, Isaiah. And it might be the name of the chat since I already have one called that. Let me just try something slightly different. This is my day-to-day life, finding a little error, troubleshooting it, but I love it. I love solving problems with Power Automate. All right, while we're running this one more time, any questions, Shadid?
Looking, no questions at this time.
All right. Interesting. Well, you've seen it before. Let's go look at the one that's working, and we'll see if we can spot a difference here. Sometimes I forget steps. So in our original create chat, we're putting the output. We're still trimming it. Let's see, it's from recipients. Yep. So I'd have to play with this one a little bit, and I think it has to have something to do with the conflicts between the two since they're very similar flows, and I bet I chose something from the old one at some point, is my guess. But I hope you saw, at least through the first one, or maybe through the build itself, something new that could work for you, whether it's using the new designer and how much simpler it is sometimes finding your actions, or, Classic still got its benefits too. I love the ellipsis myself, so that's a hard thing to let go of. But if it wasn't that, maybe it was just a new idea, a way to use adaptive cards in your workplace, or maybe it was just the sample library. So let's go through just a few final things here. First of all, these links, Shadid, what would be the best way to share like the adaptive card links and all of that?
I would say to send to me, and I will email to the mailing list.
Perfect. All right. So I'll follow up with Shadid and we'll get those links to everybody. And then I do want to open it up, spend whatever time we have left for questions. And just one more thing, I do have a blog post with these steps in it as well. So if you want to copy paste that entire JSON payload, that's all there, and a video which will take you through the build of the first flow. So what questions do we have after you've seen the entire solution?
Well, with the solution itself, I'm curious to know because when we build solutions, it's oftentimes iterative. We learn as we go. My question to you would be, what did you learn the most from building the solution? That what did it teach you in terms of how you go about, let's say availability in a different way? Has this changed how you go about this process? Not necessarily forever, but have you found a faster, more intelligent way as a result of the solution?
Mhm. So I'd say maybe one of my biggest takeaways so far has been better thinking about our existing business processes and how much time we spend just trying to corral people, right? Whether it's people or information or things, and there's so many repetitive things, especially like on a scheduled basis where we do it every Friday or we do it every Monday, where these little helpers can jump in and help do some of the poking, right? Or maybe we're forgetful, we're humans, we make mistakes. Power Automate is not forgetful. So it'll help keep us in line. So as a result of this solution, things that have already started coming to me along the similar kind of thinking is I have a project list. Why don't I send myself, a digest of all of my in-progress projects for the week every Monday? One, as a reminder of what's on my plate, but two, as a reminder to go and update those items, right? And to share that status with other people. Expand on that idea and think about one for your whole team, right? If you're sharing tasks with them, loop through it and create those custom notifications and those quick links to get right into that SharePoint list, as opposed to people spending individual amounts of time, opening a browser, going to SharePoint, finding the site,. So for me, I think that was the biggest one, because overall, I think we can agree this is a simple solution in theory, right? Takes an hour to build, but all it's really doing is saying, "Hey Nate, what you doing next week?" You click submit, puts it in a table, sends that table.
Sometimes the solution starts from simplicity, and so there's an insane amount of replay value in this solution and session.
That's great. It was a lot of fun presenting. Any other questions that we might have or thoughts as we're thinking about how do I implement this with my organization?
From social media, let's say, how can this solution be, let's say, in a Fortune 500 context, with HR being the department?
Mhm. Yeah, so thinking Fortune 500, you're probably a huge HR department. So I still think it has value in a similar concept where you're getting people in the chat as opposed to sending an email, where it might be less frequently checked these days. I know some people still prefer email, but that is something to think about when you're thinking, when we've got a large group and we know the concurrency control is 50, is chat, or is a loop at all really going to be our best solution here? What you might think of instead is could we create a power app perhaps? And the message that we send out on Friday asks the same questions, looks a little bit different, right? But it will support that bigger load where people get the email, they're like, sure, I can go submit that, right? They click the link, opens the app, they submit their availability. It knows who they are, just like the solution does, so they don't have to enter their personal details. They literally just, once again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, submit. And then that can feed, again, with SharePoint list. It could be an Excel workbook. It could be Dataverse. That would be nice too. And then maybe instead of that first flow with the 50 limit on a loop, maybe you just do the second flow, right, where you send the results on Monday, which would support that a lot better. So that's one idea, just maybe thinking about exploring Power Apps a little bit to field the incoming information every week. And then let's see, with HR, you got me thinking about something. What was it?
Oh, well,
Hmm, I
yeah,
remember.
the context was HR related in terms of, let's say, availability of either, let's say, employees or HR team members within that particular department.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think, yeah, those two approaches, Power Apps are sticking with this solution that we demoed tonight would be good. And then I just remembered it was the way that we notify people, because we can certainly use Teams. And even for if you choose to do like a link to a form that they'll fill out to handle that load better, you could still do that through chat. But what I'm learning in one of my current solutions I'm building is that not everybody likes chat or appreciates it, right? And sometimes it's an intrusive method to notify people. So what you could do is actually create a list of subscription preferences. And then I'm doing this for an app right now, so I'm thinking in a Power Apps context, but you could do this outside of it too, where you have a list where people just specify, I actually don't want a chat, or I prefer email, or some people want both because they might be in one place or the other and they want to answer pretty quickly. So with just a simple employee column and a simple choice field with both or just email or just Teams, you could actually customize that notification experience too. And when we're thinking at Fortune 500 companies or any larger company, we're thinking, there's a lot of people to cater to, and we could really make this a successful win for the organization if we do personalize it to that extent. Hopefully that helps.
Awesome. And also, John Weiland says he loves this session slash solution.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
So yes, excellent presentation, Nate, and thank you once again for sharing your knowledge with our group. This recording will be available on YouTube. We all will also send the replay to our mailing list. And excellent session, excellent content, use case, and delivery.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for attending.
Yes, on behalf of the great Nate Chamberlain, I'm Shad Didi Laser. Join us next month as we welcome Prashant Boyer uh, to deliver a feature session that will be third Thursday of April. So we're wrapping things up. Stop the recording. And again, stay tuned online and on the mailing list for the replay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, have a good evening, Nate. And thanks
Yep.
again.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay.